keys were absurd. I was right. He was wrong. I said he'd lose his keys.
No, you were
Couldn't
not
find
right,
him
and
before
I
the
was
election.
not wrong, and that's a cheap shot, and I won't stand.
We're getting
Who
along
taught
so
you
well.
manners for blasphemy against me? You don't need to do that. You don't boost your
Blasphemy
ego.
against.
Education does not equal wisdom. It simply equals information.
What is going to happen to the military when the military opens fire on us?
But no one's.
Can you say, hang on one sec, Chuck, I just
We're
wanna ask
way
you,
down a
because
rabbit hole here.
You
Alan Lichtman is back. You would have thought that he would have gone into hiding, hid from the embarrassment of his 13 keys being wrong, but instead he is doubling down. Instead of taking responsibility, instead of admitting that he was too biased to properly administer his keys, which, by the way, if used correctly, would have actually predicted a Trump win, he is instead doubling down, insulting you, insulting me. He's saying that the fault is with the public. He's saying, you know, everyone else is to blame except for him. This is the moment that Alan Lichtman and Cenk Uygur got into a shouting match on the Piers Morgan show.
Don't blame the voters. I think, look, we could get into this discussion, but one, I think you're blaming the voters. I think that's a terrible idea. Look, I debated Professor Lichtman before. I told him his theories about the keys were absurd. I was right. He was wrong. I said he'd lose his keys.
No, you were
Couldn't
not
find
right,
him
and
before
I
the
was
election.
not wrong, and that's a cheap shot, and I won't stand for it.
Well, who won, brother?
You should not be
Who
taking
won?
cheap
Who
shots
won?
at me.
Who
You
won?
want to make your
You
point,
live
make your
in
point.
a total
Don't make
world
it
of
personal.
denial.
I read your own followers' comments, and they all trashed you, every one of them, and supported me.
Yeah,
so quiet
right,
with
right.
your personal
yeah,
attacks.
come find out again.
Make whatever
Okay.
point you want.
Yeah, yeah.
Don't
Look,
make
you
it personal.
You don't know anything. You don't know
You
anything.
attacked me
You
personally.
You're so deluded.
Oh, right. I've only
Okay.
been a professor for 51 years.
On this program,
published
I've never been
13
able
books.
to finish a
How
thought.
many books have you published? No, because you're personally
Yeah.
attacking me again. Say whatever you want, but I'm not going to
Okay,
stand
but
for
brother,
personal
you got it
attacks.
wrong.
Say
you were
whatever you want.
preposterously and stupidly wrong. So, okay, all right. Can I just
Don't
finish
call
a damn thought
stupid.
ever on this show?
No, not if you're
Okay,
personally
well,
I
you proved
admitted
it.
I was wrong. I don't need you to call me stupid.
Okay.
Can I just say,
What
it's
kind of
great to see
nonsense
you
is that?
Democrats
Yeah, I
all
know.
getting
Who
along
taught
so
you
well.
manners?
It's lovely to
You
see a
just wanted to
post-election
finish a
harmony as you all
goddamn
come
point.
together
We're
again.
just one
Alan,
right now.
shh. Hey, Alan, you deserve a tall glass of shut-up juice, so can you just shut up for a second and let someone who knows what
Not
they're
if
doing...
you're
so
gonna
right,
personally
Pierre.
attack
You're
me.
so right.
So-
We're so
Make
unified
any
right
point
now.
Okay.
It's
you
great.
want.
So-
I will not sit here and stand
So-
for personal attacks, for blasphemy against me. You don't need to do that. You don't boost your
Blasphemy
ego
against you?
by
Who the hell are
attacking
you?
me
Are you
like that.
Jesus
Just
Christ,
make your
you
points.
loser? Okay, can
your
I
points.
just give the correct answer for once?
First of all, Cenk Uygur did not attack Alan Lichtman. And in fact, Lichtman was actually taking Cenk out of context. I don't know whether he misheard him or was being disingenuous and purposefully spinning his words, but Cenk called him stupidly wrong. He never called Lichtman a stupid person. There is a big difference between adding a qualifier to describe how wrong Lichtman was. And you know what? I don't mind that Cenk is dragging Lichtman over the coals, because he deserves it. He was so arrogant throughout this entire election cycle. He said he's never been wrong and he won't be wrong. Well, guess what? He was wrong. That is not a personal attack. That's just going through the timeline of events. And then for Lichtman to say, how dare you blaspheme me? As if he's some religious holy figure. As if he's holier than the rest of us. I mean, that just shows us. That is proof of how egotistical he is, of how inflated his ego is, of just how much he's conflated his education, his graduation from Harvard, and the fact that he has, yes, several books under his belt and has been a professor for 51 years, as if all of that equates to, moral superiority. Give me a break. But you know what? It wasn't just this one appearance on the Piers Morgan show. Lichtman has actually also been on CNN, and then here's another clip where, again, he's not taking responsibility for his own bias. He's not taking responsibility for his own Trump derangement syndrome, which led him to inappropriately apply the keys. Because, you know what? I actually bought two versions of his book. And I've gone through the deep dive on my channel, but for people who are new, people who are just watching this video, maybe this is the first time you've seen me, I actually bought 2 different versions of his book because there are multiple editions. And I went through and based on his own criteria applied the keys, which by the way, he changed his criteria when applying them this time, which is why he predicted a Kamala Harris win. But instead of admitting that, instead of actually taking fault for everything, because you know what, he could actually salvage the keys, he's still doubling down and he's blaming you and me. He's blaming misinformation. And then, you know, the suggestion there being that we're too dumb to be able to sort through the facts for ourselves. Here's what Lichtman also said, if I can get this to load.
It was some 10 million Biden voters who decided not to vote this time, and that's directly tied to misinformation. You know, they don't like Trump, but, you know, they're thinking, well, do we really
Did Donald Trump not pick up more
want...
votes this time than he did in 2016?
So, pardon me?
Did Donald Trump pick up more votes this time than he did in 2016?
Yeah,
Or in
but not
2020?
than he picked up in 2020, the most relevant last election. He picked up about
I think
the
what I'm
same, but
saying is
10
that
million.
both sides can say things like this, like misinformation. It's hard to quantify that.
If you don't let me make my points, why do you have me on?
No, we
Let
love
me
it. It's
finish.
a conversation. It's spirited. I think there's a
All
little
right,
bit of a delay.
done. We're done.
I
You
think
won't
we'd
let
love.
me talk. What's the point?
You can
Are
go-
you the expert or am I the expert? You can
Apparently,
question
you
me,
so
but you
claim
gotta
to be
let
an
me talk.
expert. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. The critical thing in this election were at least 10 million Biden voters who did not vote. If even half of them had voted, this election would have been different.
We hope to have you back in 4 years. There is a little bit
Oh
of a
my
delay,
gosh.
Professor Lichtman, so I apologize if we were stepping on each other's toe. Our intent was, of course, to listen to what you had to say. And like you said, you were wrong. But maybe in 4 years, we'll get back on track. Again, Alan Lichtman with us here on the DMV Zone. We appreciate you.
No, we don't want to hear from him in 4 years. And even there, you saw just his arrogance. You saw his ego. And that is just not allowing him to actually fine-tune his keys. You know, I have long been skeptical of them, but they did predict a Trump win if you used his original criteria for applying the keys. Now, I just hate how he always falls back on, am I the expert or are you the expert? Am I the Harvard graduate or are you the Harvard graduate? He is conflating wisdom with education, and there is a difference. So, friend of the channel, Christian Watson, actually did his own video criticizing Lichtman's keys. And in that video, he did not personally attack Alan Lichtman at all, by the way. But there are 2 clips I wanted to share with y'all because I think he just hit the nail on the head. And I think point number 1 goes to that exactly, the difference between education and wisdom.
Education does not equal wisdom. It simply equals information. And how you get information is almost as important, if not more important, than what kind of information you get. And for that reason, I think we're going to continue to see the lowering of the stock of people like Alan Lichtman, because political scientism is unraveling. And that, by the way, is a fundamentally good thing. For a very long time, and I'll close on this, Americans have been very skeptical of the pretensions of people in academia. People throughout history, historians will call this anti-intellectualism and a preference of folk wisdom, but it was actually much more than that. It was more so an understanding that there are certain common ideas that are common sense, really, that can allow us to live good lives and have good societies.
He is spot on. And by the way, for y'all who want to see his video on Lichtman, I'm going to pin Christian Watson's video, and it'll be pinned as the #1 comment in the comment section down below. But that's absolutely correct. I mean, the media tries to put it, you see them dividing us all the time based on different class, right? Class, gender, race, ethnicity, whatever. And this new thing that they've been doing in the Trump years has been trying to divide us based on education, which is just not only insulting, but has nothing to do with why we vote the way we vote. Because there is a difference between education and wisdom. And you know what? The smartest people in the room can actually be the ones who convince you to do something dumb, convince you to make the wrong decision. I'm just saying that can happen. Now, what Christian was saying was actually a really great point, because if you look at the data from this past election, it was 1 in 5 adults, or 20% of the population, instead of getting their news from the mainstream media, got their news from social media or got their news from influencers. And I think that's a good thing, because no longer do we have the gatekeepers of the corporate mainstream media, who, by the way, are now in bed with not only the lobbyists, but in bed with each political party. I mean, when that happens, you can't trust the information you're getting, because there is an agenda behind it. And that's why people are going to social media. That's why people are going to influencers. Now, Christian Watson also in that video makes a very good point. And he said that, speaking of Alan Lichtman, part of the reason that these elitists, especially the political scientists, frown down on the rest of us is because they believe that everything unofficial is misinformation. But the thing is that unofficial stuff, more often than not, tends to be proven right in the end. Here's what Christian has to say.
Anything that is outside of this specialized system is somehow disinformation. It's somehow not trustworthy if it doesn't come from an official source. So from him, disinformation came in, and that swayed minds, and the keys didn't fail. It was more so society, which the keys measured, that had to fail. Do you see this totalizing system of measuring politics and political questions with science, as opposed to seeing them as simply broader phenomenon that have to involve investigating human desire? Because ultimately, politics is simply a system of governance. And when you're in a republic, a system of governance is going to reflect the people. So, therefore, in order to understand politics, you must first understand the people and their culture. But if you treat politics simply as a scientific game that has no connection to reality beyond what can be measured, then you're not going to understand why those tools, like Lichtman's keys, actually have limits within reality, which is why disinformation becomes a convenient excuse when the actual logic of these tools is not as expansive as those whose credibility is staked upon them and those who use them would like you to believe.
Yes, that was just spot on. And I think that's the thing. It's Lichtman, his credibility lies on this idea that he has a perfect track record. He's never been wrong. And then when he's been proven wrong, and by the way, he's been proven wrong before, but this is the first time where we have so much video evidence that it'll be really hard for him to, spin his way out of this one, right? But it's just, they're doubling down on stupid. And not a personal attack, by the way. I'm just criticizing what he's doing. I'm criticizing his action because it's a failure to understand the people. It's a failure to understand the country, because he is so dogmatic with his keys that he can't just take the blinders off and realize, you know what? The government might not say we are officially in a recession, but if the people are saying it, then hey, maybe I should turn that key. And by the way, in his book, that was actually one of the standards. In his book, he said that you could actually base it on how people are feeling. And then, this year, for whatever reason, he changed his mind. He went against his own definitions. You guys can check out my previous videos on Alan Lichtman, because at first I tried to be nice about it and just go after the ideas, because I'm an attack the ideas kind of person. But he, to me, has proven himself to be so arrogant, so dishonest, that at this point I'm just openly okay with calling him a fraud. Because you see it in how he conducts himself in interviews. You see it in how he talks to reporters, and how he talks to fellow commentators like Cenk. I mean, just absolute disrespect. So it was really rich for him to say, "Who taught you manners?" when he was yelling at Cenk Uygur on the Piers Morgan show. Now, one more clip. Speaking of misinformation, that comes a lot from CNN, and one of their panelists just really, the conspiracy theories they come up with. Now she's warning the viewers of CNN that the military under Donald Trump is going to start firing on citizens as they're deporting violent criminal migrants. Take a look at this moment.
Promise you with every fiber of my being, because I'll probably be one of those people, that if anybody comes for these people and tries to drag them out by force, there will be protests of people like me, American citizens, who are going to stand there and do everything possible to prevent these women and children, which is all who these people are, from
How
being
about the
forced,
criminals?
from being.
How about the terrorists? How about the
But how do you
convicted
sort
Stop!
through
How do you know who it
How
is?
do you sort through
All,
That's the problem.
I
I don't know
live.
who
Stop!
it is.
Stop! Stop! I'm sorry. I live next to these people. I can tell you they are women and they are children. Are there terrorists among them? I don't know, but I can tell you that
And
there.
neither does the government,
But I
which
can
is why
tell
we
you.
have to
But
figure
let
this
me tell.
out.
Okay, but what I'm telling you right now, practically speaking, is that there will be people, American citizens, who will prevent these little kids from being dragged out of these shelters. There are. And what's going to happen to these people? What is going to happen to the military when the military opens fire on us?
No one's.
Can you say, hang on one sec, Chuck. I just
We're
wanna ask
way
you,
down a
because
rabbit hole here.
Yeah, talk about just crazy conspiracy theories. No one's even talking about the military firing on its citizens. First of all, not going to happen, especially under Donald Trump. I mean, we had the BLM riots of 2020. Did you see the military shooting at people then? I mean, that was really bad. Second of all, is she openly, encouraging, she's openly admitting, and then in doing so, encouraging people who share her viewpoint to disobey the law and to act against the military and to defend criminals. I mean, that's what she's doing on CNN, which is a shame. But as always, all of this is just my analysis and commentary. This is what's going on in the world of politics from my point of view, and I would love to hear from you. What is your take on the Cenk Uygur and Alan Lichtman exchange? I thought that he was going to go into hibernation, Lichtman. I thought he was going to crawl back into his Ivy League tower abode like a bear in the winter and stay there for the next 4 years. But, he's doing the media rounds. He appears to like the attention. And like I said, I think it's the ego. Truly. Let me know your thoughts on all of that. Or am I being too mean? I don't know. I don't want to personally attack him. But you know what? At this point, I do think he's a fraud. Just saying. But again, just my analysis, just my commentary. If you haven't, please be sure to give me a thumbs up. I know it's a simple thing to do, but it really does help me reach more viewers like you in the algorithm. My goal is to reach 100,000 subscribers by the new year. Do you think we can do it? I don't know. It's so close, yet it's so far away. But I am working and fighting hard for every single view. To celebrate that milestone, if and when the channel gets there, I will introduce you to my sleepy but not so sleepy dog. He really is a ball of energy, as well as the most handsome tuxedo cat you've ever seen, tell you their adoption stories and all of that. So if you enjoy politics, if you enjoy the channel, if you enjoyed today's video, and if any of that interests you, be sure to smash that subscribe button and to check out one of these videos.